Today we're going to do a pre-trip inspection test for the state requirements.
As you can see, you will not check the actual lights yourselves. You will only check that the indicators on your dashboard are operating properly. At this point, the examiner will walk outside and check to make sure that all of your lights are operational. You will have to tell the tester which lights you are activating, such as, I am checking my headlights, low and high beams, left and right turn signals, and four-way flashers. On the rear of my truck, I will also check my brake lights, left and right turn signal, and four-way flashers, my tail lights, and all marker lights. When you're outside of the truck, you will mention everything as required for the lighting components.
First thing we want to check is to make sure that our air system is at under 90 psi. As you can see right here, they are close to 100. So the first thing to do without starting the test first is release some of the air. Okay, my system is now at under 90 psi, so I can begin my test now. First thing I'm going to do is do a safety start. For a safety start, I'm going to make sure my truck is in neutral. Make sure my parking brakes are engaged. Press the clutch. And I can start the vehicle. First thing that I noticed was that my ABS light came on and off, and my regen light also came on and off, and it is off now, indicating that it does not need a regen. I'm going to raise my RPMs a little bit to about 1200 RPMs to help it build the air faster. And okay, my air governor just cut out at 140 psi. I'm going to start with my air leakage down test, and for that I need to shut my engine off. Turn the key back to the on position, and I'm going to release my brakes. I want to make sure that my truck does not roll. If it does roll, I would chock the wheels. I'm going to let the system stabilize. And the first part of the test, I want to make sure that I do not lose more than 4 psi in 1 minute for a combination vehicle. I'm going to press on the brake and start my timer. Looking at my gauges here. Okay, it's been a minute and I did not lose more than 4 psi. Next, I'm going to check my low air pressure warning signal, and that should activate before the system reaches 55 psi. So I'm looking at my gauges here and looking for my low air warning. I'll fan the brakes off again. My low air pressure warning system activated before the system reached 55 psi. Next, I'm going to check that my emergency parking brakes activate at approximately 40 psi. Again, fan the brakes down. And they both popped out at 30 psi. Now I'm going to do a safety start again. Neutral, parking brakes are engaged, clutch in, and I will start the vehicle again. Release my clutch slowly. Okay, now I'm going to check my dashboard indicators. Right turn signal, my left turn signal, my four-way flashers. I'm going to turn my headlights on, and my high beam indicator are all functioning correctly. I'm going to check my gauges. Checking my oil pressure gauge to see that the oil pressure is at the normal operating range and no warning lights are on. My water coolant temperature gauge is at the normal operating range with no lights on. Voltmeter gauge is showing that the alternator is charging and no warning lights are on. Air gauges are building to between 120 and 140 psi, and they are working properly. I'll check that my DEF light indicators show that it is over 1/8 of a tank. While it's building air, I'm going to continue with my in-cab inspection. First, I'm going to check my seat belt to make sure that my seat belt is not cut or frayed or damaged, that it latches securely and properly, it adjusts properly, and the seat belt is secure to the vehicle. Next, I'm going to check my horns to make sure that my horns are functioning correctly. I'm going to check my heater and defroster to make sure that the heater and defroster is working correctly. And that is working correctly as well. Next, I'm going to check my windows and my mirrors. My mirrors are clean. They are properly adjusted. They are not missing any clamps or any parts. They are securely mounted to the vehicle. The mirror is not damaged, does not have any cracks or anything obstructing my view. My windshield is clean. It is not damaged. It does not have any illegal stickers or anything obstructing my view. And it is not damaged. My emergency equipment, I have a fully charged, properly rated and stored, securely mounted fire extinguisher in the jockey box. I have 3 emergency triangles also in the jockey box, and I have spare electrical fuses in my box here. I'm going to check my windshield wipers. My windshield wipers function properly. There is no damage to the blades or the arms. And my windshield washer fluid also functions correctly. Okay. I have sufficient air to do my brake tests on the vehicle. So I'm going to go to first gear. I'm going to release my trailer brake, and I'm going to check my parking brake to make sure that it holds the vehicle. The vehicle did not move. I'm going to release my parking brake and apply the trailer brake and tug against it again. My vehicle did not move. I'm going to release all of my brakes, and I'm to about 5 miles an hour and apply my brakes. Okay. Okay, I applied my brakes. My vehicle did not pull to the right or left, and it stopped when the brakes were applied. And I'm going to shut my engine off and my lights, and that concludes the in-cab inspection. The next thing we're going to be checking for, as I come out to the front of my truck, I'm going to check all my lights. I'm going to make sure that my lights are clean, not missing or broken, and they are the proper color for their location. In the front, I'm going to check my clearance lights, my headlights, low beams and high beams, my turn signals, my 4-way emergency flashers, That all of my lights on the front, except the headlights, are amber color. Headlights are clear. Underneath my truck, I'm looking for puddles of oil, coolant, or fuel around the engine compartment or in the transmission compartment. Now I'm going to go ahead and go under the hood and check my engine components. First things I'm going to be checking for is my engine oil level to make sure that that's at the proper level. My coolant level is also at the proper level. My power steering fluid is at the proper level as well. Okay, I'm going to be checking my components. I'm going to check my air compressor to make sure that my air compressor is securely mounted, operating properly, not damaged, gear driven, and not leaking. My power steering unit is also gear driven. It is operating properly, not damaged, not leaking, and securely mounted. I'm going to check my water pump. My water pump is securely mounted. It is not damaged, operating properly. It is belt driven. I'm going to check the belt. Make sure that my belt is not frayed, is not showing any loose fibers, no cracks, and no signs of wear. And it does not deflect more than 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch from the center. On this side of the truck, I'm going to be checking my alternator. My alternator is securely mounted, not damaged, working properly. The wires are securely connected and not damaged. It is also belt driven. And the belt, I would check the same as I did on the other side. I'm going to check my hoses, my radiator hoses, and all my other hoses in the engine compartment are not damaged or leaking. As I mentioned, my water pump is also not leaking. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go to my suspension system. On my suspension system, I'm going to be checking my mounts, front and rear. Mounts are securely mounted, not broken. Bushings are not damaged or missing. No missing nuts or bolts. They're not cracked or bent. My springs are not shifted. They are not cracked. There are none missing. They're not broken. The bushings, there are none missing, are not damaged. My U-bolts are securely mounted. They are not cracked, broken, damaged, or missing, and they are tight. My shock absorber is securely mounted and not leaking. My power steering hoses are securely mounted. They are not leaking. All of the fittings are tight and not leaking. The hoses are not rubbing on anything or damaged. My steering components, I'm going to first check my steering gearbox. Steering gearbox is securely mounted. No loose or missing nuts or bolts. It is not leaking. Okay, I'm going to check that the steering linkage that connects from the steering box to the wheel are not worn or cracked. I'm going to check that the joints and sockets are not worn or loose, and that there are no missing or loose nuts or bolts or cotter pins and keys. I'm going to check my airlines. My airlines are not cracked, worn, or frayed. They are not damaged. They are not cut. They are not leaking. And all airlines can supply air. I'm also going to check my fittings to make sure that the fittings are securely connected and the fittings are not leaking either. I'm going to check my brake chamber. My brake chamber is securely mounted. It is not cracked, it is not dented, it is not leaking, and it is not missing any clamps or nuts or bolts. Let me check I'm going to check my slack adjusters and push rods, make sure that the slack adjuster, the push rod is not bent, broken, loose, or missing any parts. It is securely mounted, and I'm going to make sure that my slack adjuster does not move more than 1 inch when pulled by hand. Okay, I'm going to be checking my brake linings. My brake linings are not worn dangerously thin, and there are there's no debris such as oil or grease. I'm going to check my brake drums to make sure that my brake drums are not cracked, they do not have any holes, they're not damaged, and they're not missing any bolts, and they are not contaminated with grease or oil. I'm also going to be checking my axle seal on the front to make sure that there are no leaks. I'm also going to be checking my steer tires to make sure that my steer tire is not damaged. The steer tire should have a minimum of 4/32 of tread depth in every major groove. It is evenly worn. The sidewalls or the tread is not damaged. There's no cuts, bulges, or damage to the tire. I'm going to check my wheel. My rim does not have any illegal welds. It does not have any cracks or bent rims or other damage. My lug nuts are all present. None are missing. They are not loose. There's no black streaks or rust trails coming from the lug nuts indicating that they might be loose. There are no cracks or distortions from the lug nut holes. I'm going to check my axle seal to make sure the axle seal is not leaking and that the oil is to the proper level as well. I will check the air pressure by using a tire gauge and checking I'm going to check my valve caps and the stem. I'm going to make sure the valve stem and cap are not missing, broken, or damaged. Okay, I'm going to go on to the side of my vehicle. I'm going to check my mirrors to make sure again that my mirrors are properly secured to the vehicle. They are clean, properly adjusted, not missing any fittings or clamps. My window is not dirty. There's no damage to my window. I'm going to check my door. The seals on my door are intact. My hinges are secure. The door opens and closes securely. I'm going to check my steps leading to the cab entry, that make sure that the steps are solid and they're free from debris and mounted securely to the tractor frame. My DEF tank and my fuel tank are both securely mounted to the vehicle. Caps are tight on both and they are not leaking. On the side of my truck, I'm going to be checking my lights as well. Turn signals and marker lights, same as I would on the front. Here it's amber color. I'm also going to be checking my jockey box. Check my emergency equipment, and I would check the door the same as I did the driver's door. Coming to the back of the truck, I'm going to check my catwalk. I'm going to check that my catwalk is solid, it's free of debris, and it is mounted securely to the tractor frame. I'm going to be checking my airlines coming out of the cab to make sure that the fittings are securely connected. The fittings are not leaking. The electrical cord is also securely attached and locked in place. I'm going to check my airlines and my electrical cord to make sure that neither are cut, spliced, taped, or worn, and there is no steel braids showing through. I'm going to check that the glad hands and electrical plugs are firmly seated, locked in place, and free of damage. I'm going to check to make sure that the air hoses are not leaking, and the air hoses and electrical lines are not tangled, crimped, pinched, or dragging against any of the tractor parts. Not damaged. I'm going to check on the trailer side of the hoses. Check to make sure that all my fittings, glad hands, are properly connected, that they are not leaking, they're locked in place. My electrical cord on the trailer is also locked in place, so everything here is functioning correctly. I'm going to check the front of the trailer. On the trailer, on the front, there are no missing rivets, no holes, no damage to the front. The trailer lights are, clearance lights are amber color. I'm going to be checking the same as I would on the front. On my truck, I'm going to check my drive line. My drive line is not bent, cracked, twisted. The U-joints are securely mounted. They do not have any debris wrapped around them. I'm going to check my frame. On my long frame rails, I'm going to look for cracks, broken welds, holes, or other damage. I'm going to look for any loose, cracked, bent, broken, or missing cross members. From this side, I can see my exhaust. Exhaust system is not damaged. There are no signs of leaks such as rust or carbon soot. The system is tightly connected, securely mounted, has no loose clamps, and there are no cracks, holes, or severe dents in the exhaust system. I'm going to check my torque arm. My torque arm is securely mounted and not damaged. Okay, on the back, I'm also going to be checking my axle seals to make sure that my axle seals are not leaking. On the frame of the tractor, I'm checking my mounts, my springs, my U-bolts, and my shock absorbers, the same as I did on the front. Additionally, I'm going to check my airbags to make sure that my airbags are fully aired up. They are not leaking, not damaged. The mounting for the airbags is not cracked, broken, or damaged. No loose or missing nuts or bolts. I'm going to check my brakes on the tractor. I'll be checking my air lines, my brake chambers, my push rod and slack adjuster, my brake linings, and my brake drums, the same as I did on the front. On my tires, the minimum tread depth on the tires on the rear is 2/32. I would check my tires, my rims, my lug nuts, and my axle seals the same as I did on the front. On the tires, I want to make sure that the inside tire is not damaged, that there is nothing lodged between the duals, not rubbing on anything. I'm going to check my fifth wheel. On my coupling system, I'm going to check for any loose, missing mounting brackets, clamps, bolts, or nuts. The slide mounting is securely mounted, and the fifth wheel is securely mounted to the slider. There are no missing brackets or broken parts, no cracked, broken welds, loose or missing any bolts, and it is solidly attached. I'm going to check my skid plate to make sure that my skid plate is properly lubricated. My fifth wheel skid plate is not missing any parts. All the cotter pins are in place. My release arm is locked in place and not damaged. On the apron is not bent, cracked, or broken. It is a sliding fifth wheel, so I want to make sure that my sliding pins are locked in place and not damaged. It is an air slide system, so I want to make sure that my air line is not crimped, cut, damaged, or leaking and functioning correctly. I'm going to check my fifth wheel setting to make sure that the setting is at the correct spot so that the landing gear does not hit the frame during turns. On the rear of the tractor, I will be checking my tail lights, my brake lights, my turn signals, and my four-way flashers, the same as I did on the front, and they should be red. And I'm going to check my kingpin to make sure that my kingpin is not damaged, cracked, or broken. I'm going to check that the jaws are wrapped around the shank of the kingpin, and make sure that there is no gap between the trailer apron and the fifth wheel. My mud flaps are securely mounted. They are not damaged, and they have red reflective tape on them. On the side of my trailer, I'm going to be checking my marker lights and turn signals and any lights that are on top, the same as I would on the front, and make sure that they're the proper color amber. That all my reflective tape is securely attached and clean. I'll be checking my landing gear to make sure that my landing gear is not damaged. It is fully raised. There's no damage to the frame, and landing pads are not damaged. Check to make sure that my crank handle is secured. The frame of my trailer, I would check the same as I did on the front, on the tractor frame. There's no holes on the trailer floor, no holes on the side of the trailer either. On my trailer tires, wheels, lug nuts, and axle seals, I would check the same as I did on the rear of the tractor. On the suspension, I would check my hangers, my springs, and my U-bolts the same as I did on the tractor. On my brakes, I would check my air lines, my brake chambers, my push rods and slack adjusters, my brake linings, and my brake drums, the same as I did on the steer axle. I'm going to check my sliding tandems to make sure that the release arm is properly secured in the lock position. I'll check that all of my pins are properly engaged and not damaged. On the rear of the trailer, I'm going to be checking my lights to make sure that all my lights are clean, not missing or broken, and red on the rear. And I'll be checking my clearance lights, my tail lights, my turn signals, four-way flashers, my brake lights, and I'll make sure that my reflective tape is positioned correctly and clean and securely attached. Check my doors to make sure that my doors are correctly. Let me check my hinges to make sure my hinges are not damaged. They are all in place. And my doors open and close correctly. All the seals are intact. And the doors close properly.